Hello Internet, this is Stravos11 and welcome to my fourth video discussing the Blackrock Mountain Hearthstone expansion. This time we're going to be talking about the latest post, the Dragons of Blackwing Lair. Let's get to it. Alright, first off we have Blackwing Corruptor. It's a 5 mana neutral minion, it has 5/4 stats, and it reads, Battle Cry, if you're holding a dragon, deal 3 damage. Now, this is 3 damage to everything, right? You can do 3 damage to face, you can target whatever you want on the board and deal 3 damage to it. First off, the stats. The stats are clearly below average. It has the Harrison Jones treatment, for example, and you can't really just plop down at Harrison Jones on turn 5 just because it's a 5-drop, but it's worth putting Harrison Jones in your deck because it has a pretty swingy effect. It has a very good effect. It destroys a weapon and draws cards, so it's worth it. Is this card worth it? Hell yeah! Are you kidding me? Let's think about it for a second. Fire Elemental. It's a pretty good card, right? Well, it's one of the best Shaman cards. I would argue that Fire Elemental is a card that pretty much makes Shaman viable. I don't think anybody cuts Fire Elementals from their Shaman decks. I've tried it and I've ended up putting them in afterwards anyway. Is this better or worse than Fire Elemental though, right? Well, let's think about it. Generally, if you have a lower cost minion with the same effect as a higher cost minion that's already good, then that's even better, right? Like if, for example, if this was a 3/2 for 2 and it had Battle Cry deals 3 damage to something, it would be insane. However, this also has kind of a downside. This is a little bit specific. You have to be holding a dragon. Now, up until now I was thinking, is it worth putting dragons in your deck just for Blackwing Technician, for example? Maybe. Blackwing Technician is a pretty good card, I would say. It's right now, after seeing this card, Blackwing Technician is significantly better. I talked about Blackwing Technician in a previous video, so I'm not going to review it here, but this card is kind of as good as a Fire Elemental. I would say that having 4 instead of 5 health makes this card much less of a power play, right? Fire Elemental is a big power play because you play it, you kill something, and then it sticks on the board because it's kind of hard to remove. It's kind of hard to kill a 5 health creature. I would argue that this card is not quite as good as Fire Elemental. It's still really good. Like this card is one of the main reasons why you play a dragon deck, right? If not the #1 reason why you play a dragon deck is because of this card. You might even play it in a Shaman. You might just have Fire Elemental and Blackwing Corruptor, right? So I would rate this card a 9 out of 11 in Constructed. It's a very good card. I hesitate to give it quite a 10 because the meta lately has been such that Fire Elemental is not quite as good as it once used to be. It's still obviously a very good card. This will often hit, and it will often do well, and it's just bring it on. Now, in Arena, this card is obviously the downside. It comes into play way more than in Constructed. You don't necessarily have a dragon, and you don't necessarily have a dragon in your hand because it's Arena. The stats are not so terrible that even if you don't get any dragons, it's unplayable. I would say that in Arena this card is about a 6 out of 11, right? I think that the effect is powerful enough to actually warrant you searching and picking dragons. And dragons in general are pretty good cards, right? You're gonna want them in Arena if you have the chance to pick them. And a 5/4 for 5, there's way worse minions out there. Now, as far as style points go, this is a pretty tame effect, right? It's a pretty vanilla effect. It's nothing crazy, it's nothing too special. Still though, it's a good card, it looks pretty cool, it's a dragon themed thing. I would give it a solid 7. Again, it doesn't impress me too much, but it's good. Blackwing Technician is a card that I covered in a previous video, but I will add one little thing to it. I wasn't sure before just how worth it would be to put a bunch of dragons in your deck just to hold them in your hand, because, you know, red and black hand didn't impress me too much, but now that I see Blackwing Corruptor, I think that it's definitely a viable strategy, and I think Blackwing Technician is going to be played pretty much in every single dragon deck. Next up we have Dragon's Breath. It is a 5 mana mage class spell, and it reads, deal 4 damage, dot, costs 1 less for each minion that died this turn. Okay, so this is an interesting mechanic. Unfortunately, this card is, in my opinion, complete garbage. Okay? Deal 4 damage for 5 mana is horrible. Okay? It's the worst thing ever. It is literally Hitler. Okay? But the effect makes it seem so that it can get a lot cheaper, right? Now, realistically, costs 1 less for each minion that died this turn. You're probably reliably going to get it to 3 mana, and you might think to yourself, well, 3 mana for 4 damage is not that bad, right? Well, there's this card called Shadow Bolt. Nobody plays Shadow Bolt. How often can you get it to 2 mana? I think that's where it starts to be significantly harder. Right? Getting it to 2 or 1 or 0 mana is pretty hard, in constructed at least. And even if you get it to 2 or 1 mana, which is really hard, there's also things like, you know, Frostbolt, there's Flame Cannon. Flame Cannon does 4 damage. Are you honestly telling me that you're going to kill 4 minions? So you're like going to trade twice, and then you're gonna have some leftover minion that just happens to have 4 health so you can kill it with this thing? Well, you can just use Flame Cannon in that situation, and it's always 2 mana, right? But what if your opponent also has another minion and you don't want to take the risk? Well, okay, so let's review this situation. So basically, when this card is good is if you have 2 minions on your board and your opponent has 4 minions, and the 2 minions that you have trade for 2 of his minions, and he has another 2 and one of them has 4 health. Really? If this was maybe a paladin or a shaman card where you can just sack a bunch of 1/1s or a bunch of totems, right? You play Flame Tongue, you sack like 3 totems, then you play Dragon's Breath in shaman for 2. That would be pretty good. But in mage, this gets a full-on 1 out of 11 in constructed. I cannot see this card getting played. In arena, I would say it's a little bit better. It's still one of the worst cards, right? Odds are, if you're going to have this in arena, it's going to get up against other spells or other mage cards that are good. So yeah, I don't see you picking it in arena either, but it is slightly better because in arena there's a lot of trading. There's maybe more trading than in constructed, right? Minion on minion thing. But even then, it's a mage. You're gonna get fireballs and polymorphs. You're not gonna pick Dragon's Breath, right? Unless you just happen to get stuck with it somehow. So even in arena, I would say it's a 2 out of 11. Yeah. As far as style points go, well, actually this is a pretty interesting effect, right? Cost 1 less for each minion that died this turn. This opens up a few interesting possibilities and maybe even some new ways to play decks. And the art style is glorious in my opinion. I love this card. The way that it looks, it's one of the coolest cards I've ever seen. So just for style alone, it'll get a 9 out of 11 from me. Too bad we won't really see it getting played. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. This has been my thoughts on the Dragons of Blackwing Lair post. If you've liked this video, consider checking my channel out in the future. I'll be making more videos about all the cards that are going to be released with the Blackrock Mountain expansion. See you guys next time.